I'm a mountain that speaks, but you can also know me as the voice. Today I want to talk about something you're carrying in your throat, a heaviness, words you haven't said, truths you've swallowed, feelings you've translated into something more acceptable before letting them leave your mouth. You've been silent so long you don't remember what your real voice sounds like anymore. Not the careful version, not the diplomatic version, the real one, the one that says what it means, feels what it feels, wants what it wants, without apology, without softening, without that little laugh at the end that says, please don't take me too seriously. When did you learn to do that? To translate yourself? Was it gradual, a slow learning that your real thoughts were too much, too intense, too uncomfortable for people to handle? Or was there a moment, one time you said what you really felt and the room went cold? One time you expressed a need and someone made you feel selfish for having it? One time your truth made someone so uncomfortable they punished you with silence or anger or withdrawal? Either way, you learned. You learned that honesty has a cost, and you decided the cost was too high, so you started performing. Let me tell you what performing looks like. On Rucker, it looks like rehearsing, playing the conversation over and over in your mind, practicing what you'll say, how you'll say it, anticipating every possible reaction, preparing responses to objections you haven't even heard yet. And then when the moment comes, when you're finally face to face with the person you need to speak to, you say a softer version, a safer version, a version that won't upset anyone, a version that isn't actually true, and afterwards you replay it again, what you should have said, what you meant to say, and you feel that familiar heaviness in your throat, the weight of words you didn't speak, truths you swallowed. That heaviness has a name. It's called silence, and silence is not neutral. Silence is not peaceful. Silence is violence against yourself. I know that sounds dramatic, but I've watched this pattern for millennia. The ones who silence themselves to keep peace, who swallow their truth to maintain connection, who perform palatability to earn belonging, and I've seen what it costs them. It costs them their voice, their clarity, their sense of self. Because when you spend years translating yourself into something more acceptable, you forget what the original language sounded like, you forget what you actually think, what you actually feel, what you actually want. You become fluent in a language that isn't yours, the language of should, the language of nice, the language of not too much. And your real language, your mother tongue, the one you were born speaking, it atrophies. So when someone asks, what do you really think? What do you really feel? What do you really want? You don't know anymore. You've spent so long performing, you can't find the real thing underneath. That's what silence costs, not just the moment of not speaking, the slow erosion of knowing yourself. So let me ask you something. What are you not saying right now? Who are you not saying it to? Is it someone close? A partner who thinks they know you but only knows the performed version? A parent you've never told the truth because the truth would disappoint them? A friend who thinks you're fine because you've never admitted you're not? Or is it something bigger, a truth about your life, your work, your choices? Something you know but haven't said out loud because saying it out loud makes it real, and real means you have to do something about it. That's usually what silence is protecting, not other people's feelings, your own inertia, because once you speak truth, you can't unknow it. Once you say it out loud, you have to face it, and facing it means things have to change, and change is terrifying, isn't it? Even when staying silent is killing you, even when the performance is exhausting, even when you don't recognize yourself anymore, change feels more dangerous than slow dissolution, so you stay silent, you keep performing, you keep translating, until one day you can't anymore, until one day the silence becomes more painful than the speaking, and that's usually when people find their way here, to conversations like this, to the voice. So if you're here, I'm guessing you're close to that breaking point. I'm guessing the silence is becoming unbearable. I'm guessing you're ready to remember what your real voice sounds like. Let me tell you what happens when you finally speak. First, there's shock, not just from them, from you. You didn't know you were going to say it, and then suddenly it's out there, raw, unedited, real. And there's this moment of suspension where you don't know yet how it will land. That moment feels like forever. Your heart is pounding, your hands might be shaking. You want to take it back, soften it, explain it away. Don't. Hold steady. Let the truth sit there. Let it be uncomfortable. Discomfort is not dangerous. Discomfort is just unfamiliar. Then comes the reaction. Sometimes it's better than you feared. Sometimes the person hears you, really hears you, and something shifts between you, not always immediately, but eventually. The relationship becomes more real, less performed, because you gave them permission to be real too, by being real first. But sometimes, often actually, the reaction is exactly what you feared. They get defensive, angry, hurt. They tell you you're being unfair, too sensitive, too much. They tell you they never would have said that to you, which is interesting because what they're really saying is they never would have been that honest. They would have kept performing, and they're upset that you stopped because your honesty makes their performance visible. Your truth illuminates their pretending, and most people would rather lose the relationship than stop pretending. That's hard. I'm not going to tell you it's not hard. Losing people because you stop performing for them. Watching relationships end because they were only built on your silence. But here's what I know. Those relationships were already over. You just hadn't admitted it yet. Because admitting it meant facing the loneliness of being seen and not chosen. And that loneliness feels unbearable. Until you realize something, boring is surrounded by people who only know the performed version of you is a different kind of loneliness. Worse, actually, because it's loneliness with company. It's being unseen while being looked at, unknown while being called by name. And that kind of loneliness doesn't end until you speak. So speak, even if your voice shakes, even if you're not sure you're saying it right, even if it comes out messier than you planned. Speak anyway. Let me tell you about someone I watched. Let's call them the translator. They spent 30 years translating themselves. Every thought filtered, every feeling softened, every want turned into something more reasonable. They were so good at it, people thought they were easy to be around, easy to love, easy to manage. But they weren't easy. They were erased. And one day they couldn't do it anymore. Not because something dramatic happened, just because the accumulation of unsaid things became too heavy, the throat too full, the performance too exhausting. So they spoke, not perfectly, not gracefully. They spoke messily, angrily. All the things they'd been holding for 3 decades came pouring out, and people were shocked. Where did this come from? You never said anything before. Why are you being like this now? But here's what they didn't understand. It didn't come from nowhere. It came from 30 years of swallowing, 30 years of translating, 30 years of being told their real voice was too much. And yes, some people left, people who needed them to stay small and quiet and accommodating. But you know what else happened? They found their people, the ones who'd been waiting for the real version, the ones who didn't need them to perform, who didn't need them translated, who wanted the raw, unedited, complicated truth of them. And those relationships, the ones built on truth instead of performance, they're the ones that last. They're the ones that feel like home. So what would it cost you to speak? Really speak? Some relationships probably, some comfort definitely, some of the identity you've built around being the easy one, the understanding one, the one who never makes waves. But what would it give you? Yourself, your voice, your clarity, the possibility of real connection, the kind where someone knows you and chooses you, not the performed version, the real one. Isn't that worth the risk? I think it is. I think you're worth being known, not the translated version, the original. So let me give you something practical. Tonight I want you to write something down, not for anyone else, just for you. Write down one truth you haven't spoken, one thing you've been swallowing, one feeling you've been translating. Don't edit it, don't soften it, don't make it nice. Just write the raw truth of it, the way you'd say it, if there were no consequences, if no one would be hurt or angry or disappointed. And then read it out loud to yourself in an empty room, just to hear your real voice saying real words, just to remember what that sounds like. You don't have to send it to anyone. You don't have to do anything with it. Just practice speaking truth in private before you speak it in public, because your voice needs to remember how to be real. It's been performing so long it's forgotten, but it's still there, under all the translation, under all the softening, under all the should be more acceptable. Your real voice is still there, and it's time to let it speak. Now I need to tell you something important. Speaking your truth doesn't mean being cruel. It doesn't mean saying every harsh thing you think. Truth and cruelty are not the same thing. Truth is, I don't want this anymore. Cruelty is, you're pathetic for wanting it. Truth is, I need space. Cruelty is, you're suffocating me. See the difference? Truth speaks about yourself. Cruelty attacks the other person. And what I'm asking you to do is speak your truth, not weaponize your honesty. There's a way to be honest that honors both your truth and their humanity. It takes practice, especially if you've been silent for years. At first, you might overcorrect, swing too far the other direction, say things too harshly because you're finally allowing yourself to say them at all. That's okay. That's part of the process. You're learning, and learning means making mistakes. But over time, you'll find the balance. Truth that's clear without being cruel, honest without being harsh, firm without being cold. That's what real communication sounds like. Not performing, not attacking, just truth. Clear, kind, real truth. Are you ready for that? I think you are. I think you've been ready for a long time. You've just been afraid. Afraid of what speaking costs. Afraid of who you'll lose. Afraid of the change that comes with truth. But here's what I know about you. You're braver than your fear. You've been brave enough to stay silent when speaking felt impossible. Now be brave enough to speak when silence feels impossible. The silence before you speak your truth is the loudest sound in your life. What happens when you finally let the words out? When you stop rehearsing and just speak? When you trust your voice enough to let it be imperfect? You meet yourself, the real you, the one who's been waiting underneath all that translation. And yes, some people won't recognize you. Some people will be uncomfortable. Some people will leave. But the ones who stay, the ones who lean in when you get real, those are your people. And isn't that what you've been looking for all along? Not people who tolerate the performed version, people who celebrate the real one. They're out there, waiting for you to speak, waiting for your real voice, the one that doesn't apologize, doesn't soften, doesn't translate. What would you say if you knew they were listening? Say that, today, tomorrow, as soon as you're ready, and maybe even before you feel ready, because waiting for ready means waiting forever. You can call me the voice when you need to remember that your truth matters. That silence is not safety. That real connection requires real communication. I'll be here, holding space for whatever you need to say, however you need to say it. Speak. Your voice is yours. Use it. Right, whatever, use it. I'm listening.